All right, good afternoon, YouTube. This is Mark coming at you guys from TRADEPRO Academy headquarters here in Toronto, Ontario, on today's date of Tuesday, October the 22nd, 2019. What's that? Yeah, today is the 22nd. Let me just mute myself there. All right, so we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome one, welcome all. Let's go ahead and get started with this update. We will be going through what Georgie covered in the U.S. session. Sorry, guys. What Georgie covered throughout the morning update. We're going to take a quick look at that. If it is your first time watching, please feel free to subscribe to the channel here. We do these every single day. So I'll give you guys a moment or two to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And we'll go ahead and get started on this. So let me just pull up my agenda as well. I do have my RAN squawk in the headphones, so you guys might be able to hear if anything does come through. And that can be a pretty good little example of how the new squawks work. So on today's session, Georgie kind of covered what went through the overnight session. As far as today's US session, we did have a couple of news points come through at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Those were your existing home sales and the US Richmond Fed Composite and Services Index numbers. Which came out low impact events, so not too much on the back of that. The main driver today was probably the squawk that came through with regards to OPEC. And I'll read that through for you guys in just a moment. But that was basically why crude oil just kind of exploded nearing 10:30ish, nearing 10:30, 10:40 a.m. level. We had a nice big move up in crude, and we'll get behind why that happened. So that was what we had. Really, those were the only data points this morning. Existing home sales, which came in at 5.38 million versus 5.45 million expected. Richmond Manufacturing Index came in at 8 versus -7 expected. So a nice beat on that front as well. So we did have a couple of squawks, as I mentioned. That the oil one was the big one. That one came through at 10:57. That's when the squawk came in, and it was basically stating that OPEC and allies are to consider deeper oil cuts at its December 5th/6th meetings due to weak demand growth outlook in 2020. So oil, as you guys might know, oil is it's a commodity, so it's a supply and demand kind of a market. And that little squawk in itself at 10:57, the fact that OPEC and its allies are considering deeper oil cuts means they're looking to cut production, which means that less supply is going to be hitting the market. And when there is less supply, simple supply and demand, Econ 101. Supply is up here, demand's down here. As more supply comes, or rather, as less supply is available to the market, the demand tends to go up because there's less of that, less supply available in those markets. All right, so on the back of that, we did see a nice rally in crude. That basically took us from, I want to say, those 54s up into the 54.80, so almost 80 cents on that. Almost 80 cents on that. And that was a pretty good runner on that part of the session. And that's basically all I see here with regards to anything US equity related. We did have a couple of squawks coming through again with regards to the Brexit deal. So at 11:22, we had a squawk come in that UK Prime Minister Johnson is ready to accept a 10-day extension for the Brexit deadline as long as it is the final extension from the EU. So a little bit of a pushback there. Looks like Bojo's kind of giving in, if you will. He was very hardline stance on getting this Brexit deal through by October 31st. And you know, the fact that he's kind of accepted a 10-day extension on that, while it doesn't seem like much, he is kind of lightening his stance on that front. So we might be seeing a little bit of dollar weakness coming in through the last 2 weeks or so on the cable pair. For those of you that don't know, cable is simply the US, or the UK pound against the US dollar. That pair has rallied almost 6.5% over the last 2 weeks on the back of a short squeeze, on the back of Brexit optimism, getting a deal in before October 31st. So that's the reason why we've had this big move up in the pound US dollar, and the fact that he's taken kind of an extension. You might start seeing the sell side pressure come in, and last time I checked, I believe that was the case, as the DXY basket, your US dollar basket, is trying to reclaim its 200-day moving average at the 97.40s. Let me just check what price it's at right now. Yeah, so DXY is literally right at 97.38 right now, so it's battling to reclaim that 200-day moving average. If it can reclaim that, if DXY can reclaim that, I could definitely see a lot more sell side pressure coming into the cable, given as that was one of the biggest runners over these last 2 weeks. All right, so that is what we've got. And another squawk came in at 12:04 a couple minutes ago that UK Prime Minister Johnson will reportedly be calling EU leaders tonight to tell them it remains clear that UK will leave on October 31st and that no delays should be offered. All right, so on the back of that, kind of going to what was said earlier, he's ready to accept a 10-day extension, and now, not even an hour later, he's calling the leaders and telling them it's a hard deadline. So take that as you will. That's why we don't really follow the news so heavily. We do follow the news, but we follow the order flow more so than what the news actually means, because these days, as who's that? The Freedom Grind. As the Freedom Grind mentioned in the chat, every time we seem to get a pump from news, we dump shortly after. And what can you say? Buy the rumor, sell the news. Right, so that's what I see. That's at the top of my list here. So nothing new coming in. If anything does come through between now and the time that we conclude this, you guys should be able to hear that on the squawk. So that's all that we got as far as the economic data is concerned. Let me jump onto my charts here and give you guys a quick little peek at some of these, rather both of these markets here, crude oil and S&P 500, and we can go from there. Now, before I do that, let's say hello to some of the people watching here on the chat. Stephen, hello. Will, good to see you back here. The other Will, good to see you back as well. The Freedom Grind, welcome. Oh, good stuff. NQ Short. And George, good to see you in here as well. So we've done the roll call. Let's jump onto our charts and let's get this guy started. So crude oil up top here, 375,000 contracts, pretty light to be quite honest. Crude started off on a bit of a bid, then we got back below the open, and once we got that squawk from OPEC, crude basically ran right past its open up into the current session highs around 54.80. We've double topped around that level, and looks like we're giving back a majority of those gains that were made. It's typically called the back and fill, right? So quick moves like that on the back of news, they tend to be very thin. While the markets do move up, they happen to be very thin. So if you can imagine, as the market's moving up aggressively like that, you've got to be aggressive and you've got to be lifting offers in order to get in on this upside, right? And so anybody that's kind of placing limits in this level, trying to get a little bit of a pullback before it goes up, they're not getting filled. So as price comes back through that level, some of those orders should still be around there. You can see where it tends to get a little bit light on the volume profile. You guys can see there's a little bit of a valley in there. That's where it got thin. All right, so right around this level, and that's kind of where I'm watching crude to get back into before the next best move. So I'll discuss that in just a moment. Let's finish off with this quote board before we do that. So light volume, we are up 1.46%. Previous day close came in at the 53.66. Pit session open right around the 54.08s or so. And we are basically up at 54.28. That's our last traded price. So we are up above the current US Open and the previous day close, giving us an underlying bullish tone on crude oil for today's session. S&P 500. This one really hasn't done anything today. If you did catch a trade in SPOOs and you made money, good on you. It's been a very difficult one today. Not very much movement. It's been hanging around in a range, and so crude's honestly been a little bit better of a market to trade on today's session. We do have 527,000 contracts traded today. Very light again. You know, I'd like to see at least 800,000 around this part of the session, and we're nowhere near that. So this is just showing me we're likely going to consolidate into the remainder, or rather into the close. The way that it's been going, probably we'll try upside over the overnight high, given the fact that we've tried to break below the previous day close and the previous day high on 2 occasions now, and both of those have failed. And back to the upside now. So we'll see if the SPOOs can press up to those 12 3/4, up into those 14 quarters, and we'll see what we do from there. But at some point, one of these levels has to break, and I'm just seeing the upside level has been tested more times today. So the one that's been tested more, to me, means that there's less orders. More of those orders have been absorbed up there, and it's likely to pop to the upside than it is to go down. All right, so that's what I got on the SPOOs. Daily change percentage marginally up. Like I said, previous day close here, we just bounced off of it, these 07s, and last traded price is the 10 halves. All right, so we are just barely over the US session open and just barely above the previous day close. So while it is in a consolidation, you can argue that the underlying trend is slightly bullish on today's session. So that is what the quote board is going to give us, and that's all that we're going to need from it. Pivot charts. Let's look at these guys first, and then we'll jump into the 10 tick. Now, the reason why I like to look at these pivot charts, guys, is because the pivot charts are based on a 1-hour bar chart. So if I hide this and I apply it, these guys are 1-hour bar charts, all right? Whereas these guys up here, this is a tick chart. So this one moves a lot faster, as you can imagine, than the 1-hour chart does. All right. So with the 1-hour chart, it's giving me kind of a sense of higher time frame levels where I'm looking for the next 1 to 4 days of what might be happening. And just looking at this crude oil pivot chart here, I can see that yes, we did come in from a nice bearish context, but we did make some lows here. There's another low, and we've broken. This was your first higher high in this whole sequence here, right? Once we broke through that, and this was your first higher low. So now that we've had that, you guys can see we've pulled back again. We haven't really gone back below that low, and we've kind of just been consolidating these, what do we call them, 5280s or so. So some consolidations, another retest here after breaking above highs gives us another higher low, right? So you guys are seeing the undertone here is slightly bullish. We are coming back to retest this previous high here. And in fact, we have retested it. Now, where do we go from here? All right, where do we go from here? You've got pretty good resistance up between these 5480s up into the 5520s. If we maintain back below this current session high, I can see us trying back into these range lows. However, if we can get back above these levels, the 5480s and these 5520s, I think we can start looking for another higher low and then for the upside to start coming through. That's ultimately what I'd be looking for on this chart. So that gives me a view for the week, more or less. And now we can jump on the tick charts and have a quick gander at where we are. Actually, before that, let's put the pivots back on here. And let's see if we can use them on today's session. All right, so excuse me. We did pop over R1. You guys can see we had a test of R1. We did break over it, almost up into R2, closed up above R1. Now what you would imagine is that we're going to try to test R1 as support here. This is a big level for the seller, or rather for the buyers to try to defend. You guys can see this was a previous 1-hour swing high. We broke it here, kind of retested it, broke up and closed above previous highs. Now we come down here. Do we hold this level and continue higher, or do we just flush back below it? That is what's to be determined. And I think this is kind of going to be your line in the sand for the buyers to defend today if we're going to see continued upside on today's session. If we get back below R1, I think we'll likely be back in consolidation, probably between pivot and the R1. So that's what I'm looking for on crude oil. Let me jump onto the tick chart now, give you guys some of the levels that I'm watching here. All right, so what we've done so far is, like I said, we opened pretty strong, nice little bit off the open. Then we came back to retest it, kind of flush back below it. Then we broke back above it, held it for support, and we've climbed up here. So this move right here was on the back of that new squawk about OPEC potentially cutting production into the December 5th, 6th meeting. As you can imagine, big move up, nice little double top. Oh, here's a squawk. All right, cool. I don't know if you guys heard that or not. Can you let me know in the chat? Can you just type in Y if you heard that little squawk? If my voice suddenly went British, that would be it. So let me know if you guys actually heard that or not. Now, back to the analysis. So nice double top here on crude. I was kind of looking at this level for potential continuation higher, given the fact that it was making higher lows and higher highs. Um, I like this. What I wanted to see was a bit of a double bottom here for the continuation. We never got the double bottom. In fact, it just kind of flushed right through, which is fine. What I'll be watching for now is a move back down into that open and into this value area high, as we were discussing earlier in this update. Right around here is where I'm looking for buying to start coming back in. And what you guys can see, the reason why I'm okay, so you guys didn't hear that. Interesting. So what I can see here is we did have a little bit of support. Here's the VWAP, nice breakout over that VWAP, and you guys can see it didn't get tested here, came close, but we made new highs, and now we're coming right back into that level. Just so happens to line up with the open, with the overnight high, and with the Globex VWAP. So I think that's a really strong level for support for the buyers. If we can get it in here, hold some rotations, then I could see us potentially pressing back up to the upside. If we get back below this level, I think the long side is off for today's session, and we might be making a bit of a press back down into previous day close, maybe back into the overnight low. But at this point in time, for any of the Americans out there that enjoy watching American football, your 50-yard line is right around these 08. All right, bullish above, bearish below. That's what we'll leave it on with crude. Maybe we'll be able to qualify something with you guys if it gets into that area. S&P 500, however, this guy's been very boring to trade this week so far. So let's pull this sucker out. Okay. So yeah, so that was another squawk that came through. It's unfortunate you guys can't hear that, but he's just talking about lift right now, so not really important for the S&P, more so the individual stocks. But S&P 500, it's almost looking kind of similar to oil here in the sense that we had bearish lead-in trend. We came down into this level, rotated, got some new shorts, excited down here, and then we ripped their stops back up to the upside, and kind of a same situation. Another first potential higher low, that doesn't get confirmed until we break above the previous high. That happened right here, higher high, a little pullback to previous resistance, turn support, holds, and now we're kind of we're grinding higher. It's a super slow and not the most exciting grinds to trade, but it's still going higher. Another little top here, pullback, another higher low. So you are seeing higher lows coming through. It is marginally breaking out. And right here, this is the interesting one on today's session. We've come up, and if I throw the pivot charts back on here, apply, right? Now you guys will see why this is a little bit interesting to me because we tried the R1 during, was this Globex session? What time was this? 8 o'clock. Yeah. So this was 8 p.m. overnight. We tried the R1, couldn't quite get into it, sold off into London, regained, basically V-bottomed here throughout London session into US session. And during US session, we did make an attempt at the R1. You can see we almost came back up into it before failing and closing back down on those lows. And so, to me, what this is indicating is that there is sell side pressure up there. If we get another rotation up, I'd anticipate some more selling pressure to come through. That being said, if we can get above 15, you're going to have some buy stop liquidity sitting right up there. What that means is basically any shorts that are, short in there, that are short here and haven't, or any shorts that got short up there did not take profit down here, that position is still open. Where would their stops likely be? Probably above the R1. Same situation here, as we come up into that level, we don't quite break it, and then we rotate lower. How do we rotate lower? Sell side pressure has to come in. What does that mean? Sellers get short in this level. Where do they place their stops? Generally above previous highs. What does that mean? More stops. So as you're getting these kinds of rotations coming in that keep failing to break previous highs, you're getting more interest coming in at those levels, and the stops are sitting right above those levels. All right. So yes, sellers are in control at the moment. However, if you do pop that R1, those sellers are going to look to cover their trade. How do you get out of the trade if you're a seller? You've got to buy the market. What happens when you buy the market? You further fuel prices up, and that is what a short squeeze looks like. All right, so it's looking like it's building up to become a short squeeze. And the reason why I say that is because look at how many times this top side has been tested today's session. You had one test overnight. You had another test during US session, third test, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh test, and now we're looking to approach our eighth test. All right, so after you get a pull down like this, when it comes back up, trying it the first time around, that's fine. That's still a pretty good trade. Trying it the second time around, not as high probability, but still a pretty good trade. After the first two tests of a certain level, it becomes a little bit more, or rather becomes less probable for that level to hold and for the upside to come out. And so what I'm seeing here is the fact that, yes, we've been stuck in this little range, but we've only tested this low once, twice, and we've held on both times. Nice big reversals out of it. Both times we came in, and look at how the price action happened here. It took its time. There was a little bit more time spent at that level than it was here. That's showing me buying support looks to be a bit stronger than selling resistance does, and for that reason, I think that we're going to make a move to the upside here. We've tried once, tried twice. This is a double bottom in the context of a bullish trend. If I move this out here, you guys will see the lead-in trend is bullish, and now we've got a double bottom at support. So upside looks like the right side. Sure, it can still reverse from here, but you guys have to start thinking in probabilities, not what the single trade is going to look like, right? So probability speaking, it is an uptrend. We have held support, double bottom. We've traded resistance several times. Each time it trades into that level, there's less and less. Oh, sorry, I just had to stop this squawk because it's getting in my way, right? So each time it's coming in, more orders at that level are getting absorbed, right? So anyone that didn't catch that sell-off, they'll be back up here. Now they're in, now they're in, now they're in. So each time it comes up in there, more of those orders are getting absorbed. What happens when there's no more orders here? As Georgie would say, we pop the upside and we rip those buy stops, all right? Another thing that's kind of supporting that idea is the fact that we have offers sitting right there, and you guys just saw that blue line up here. That is bids, all right? So you guys can see we started off the morning with the bids sitting down around the overnight low. They then moved up to those, I want to call them 0.475 or so, and now they moved up again into the 12s. So as these guys have moved up, you're going to want to see how this thing reacts as we start trading up towards that overnight high. The big question is going to be, do these offers stay or do they start running? If they start running and these guys keep climbing, that's your indication upside is likely to come. and that the offers are scared of getting filled at that point because they believe they can get filled at a better price, a better value. All right, so that is what we got on today's update. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I went into a little bit more detail with regards to the analysis, but I figured the value is there for you guys. I wanted to give you a little bit more of insight into the value of being in our community. So hopefully you guys got something out of that. Let's check the comment section here, see if there's anything new. Um, Gerald, good to see you in here again. Can I create? Gerald, we use AMP Futures as our broker here in Canada. It is an international brokerage, so depending on where you're at, they should be able to accommodate. That being said, you'd have to double check with them based on your location. Um, and yes, you can create trades with us. We teach you guys how to do this yourself. We are not traders that go out and we don't do any trade signals. We don't do any alerts, none of that stuff. What you get as being part in the room is that you get to see the insight of professional traders. There are four of us on the mic, myself, Georgie, who's the head trader here, Victorio, and Stephen Box. And we also have David, who runs the European session. So what we do throughout the whole session is we screen share. Georgie screen shares his setup. We will screen share our own setups if we have a potential trade. We'll walk through certain levels that interest us, what we like to see. If we're looking to qualify a trade, we'll be walking through it, but we won't say buy here, stop loss here, and take profit there. That's not teaching you anything. The only thing that's teaching you is how to rely on us for signals. If that's the case, if you're relying on somebody for signals, and I don't wish it upon anybody, but let's say that person gets hit by a bus tomorrow, you don't have any signals anymore, you're SOL, right? You're shit out of luck. Apologize the colorful language, but you're SOL. So the whole purpose of what we do here is we teach you guys how to do this yourself by sharing our screen, sharing our opinions, walking through what we're seeing in the markets in real time. And based on that, you guys will know the strategy. We all trade the same strategy. You know the strategy, and if it fits your plan, that's when you take the trade. We do not give those trades out. So I hope that makes sense. I do apologize if that seemed a little bit a little bit intense, but you know, a lot of people are looking for hand me outs in the form of signals, and that's not the place to go. To be quite truthful and to be quite transparent with you guys, a lot of the people, let me switch this over to myself because I feel like this is something I should be looking at the camera while I'm speaking on. So to be quite honest and quite truthful, a lot of the people that end up going that route, that go towards the trade signals route, we do have competitors that offer signals, that offer trade alerts, which is great for whoever wants them. But what we tend to see is that a lot of traders that go that route, they end up coming to TradePro afterwards, after losing X amount of dollars. Can't tell you how many examples we have of that, of people going to signals, looking for the quick deal. This is not a quick thing. You're not going to get rich overnight. This is something that takes time. I'm sure some of our actual community members in here, one of them is William, they can attest to the fact that this takes work, guys. This is not something that's easy. You're not going to get it done overnight. This is something that you have to put work into. It's going to challenge you. I came into this thinking, I've done well in school. I've been pretty high performance athlete. Things tend to come to me, and this is one of the things I really, really had to work on, and it was not easy by any means, but it is worth it. I will tell you that it is worth it. So, Gerald, if I haven't scared you off yet, and it still sounds like a community that you'd want to be part of, then you found the right place. Then you found the right place. So that's the freedom grind. Awesome, freedom grind. Really appreciate that. I'm not too sure what your name is, but I guess that's the beauty of YouTube. I really appreciate that comment there, freedom grind. And on the back of that, while I'm on the topic of communities, let me throw up our results for today's session here. And again, if you guys are newer, I don't want you to look at this and think that this is actual performance results as far as, 74% or we achieved 74% return on capital in today's session. That's not what this means. This is simply a indication of how our trading community did. Every single session that we do, we basically pull our members at the end of the session to see how they did, whether they were up on the session, whether they were flat on the session, or whether they were down on the session. And this is what it looks like. Today's result, pretty good, 74.51%. We're up on the session. Just under 51% ended the day green, just under 24% ended the day flat, and just over 25% ended the day down. So 74.5, good number there. Actually very proud of our team, especially given the fact that S&P 500 was a bit tougher to trade today, and that majority of the money was to be made in the oil market. So that's what I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed this one. I do apologize for going on a bit of a rant, but um, you know, I feel like that's needed sometimes, because the way that this industry is marketed, it's marketed as something you can achieve overnight. And there's a common saying, not necessarily in the trading industry, but in business in general, is overnight success, 30 years in the making. People don't see what happens in the background. People just see the success as it comes. A great example is Amazon. If you look at Amazon, you can see pictures of Jeff Bezos in his garage office back in, what was it, 94, 98, something like that, by himself. And he still had the vision, all right? And he still had the vision. Had he given up on it because he wasn't making money then, Amazon wouldn't be one of the biggest companies in the world today, and he wouldn't be one of the richest men in the world today, or richest people in the world today. So that's what I got for you guys. Let's check out on the charts real quick here just before I sign off. Looks like crude is finding some support at the level that we had mentioned. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. All right, so doesn't come as much surprise here. We did have a nice move down. This is the level that I was looking for here. We have found a bit of a bounce. All right, so I'm liking the fact that we did bounce off of it, and the volume on that bounce looked pretty good. I would have liked for this second white candle for the volume to be a little bit more, but you can't always have what you're looking for. You just got to make the best of what the market gives. All right, so we're not quite out of the sand just yet for the long side here. This happens quite often in the form that it looks good, it comes up, you set a limit here for a double bottom, and then it just flushes below. All right, so what you want to see from here is we are seeing that there is definitely some support. That's how you qualify a level. So our level now, I can see based on that reaction, there is buying at that zone. All right, now what I want to see is as we come back down into it, I want to see us fail to break below those lows, and then and only then would I be considering getting long. At this point, if you set a blind limit down here, it's not the highest probability trade because you do have the open and the VWAP sitting just below you. All right, so while I like this level, I am aware that the VWAP is sitting right there. So in order for me to get long above that VWAP, I need to see us fail to break below this previous low, and then I'd look to get long. All right. It's not always about being in a trade, guys. We disqualify a lot of our trades before we actually catch them. And if you've been listening to me or any of us here for any time, you will know that making money in the markets is not difficult. It's all about keeping the money in the markets, keeping the money that you make. And the only way to do that is to be disciplined in your approach, have rules as far as qualifying and disqualifying setups, because you really only want to be taking the highest quality trades. All right, looking at S&P 500, we are back up at this level. Kind of not surprised to see that there's more selling. There was selling happening here, so this is where I'd expect for it to happen. The real question is, can we close on a red bar with some big volume? If that is the case, we might just be back in the range, stuck back in the range, and we might make a move back towards the previous day highs. So that's what I'd be looking for here. I'd say that might be your next high probability trade, is if we get a nice close on the lows here, just look for another rotation up to sell it back down towards those lows. It's a bit of an extended target here. If you want to play it a bit safer, just don't take a short up here because we've had a lot of moves. If you want to be conservative, your next best trade would be to take a long somewhere down here, or wait for a breakout, come back in, hold that as support, and then continue higher. right? So updated analysis for you guys there. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'll pop into the chat again and then we'll sign off on this guy. Awesome. So it looks like you guys are doing well. George, we do have a couple of NASDAQ traders in the room. I know Victorio, one of our actual traders here, he was doing NASDAQ quite religiously, and he's kind of moved over to the SPOOs. A lot of the reason why people tend to go into NASDAQ is because it moves a little bit faster. It seems like it moves a little bit faster than the S&P 500, which is okay. But at the end of the day, with NASDAQ, NASDAQ is very similar to crude in the sense that you have to have a lot of conviction in order to hold your trades with NAS. NAS tends to like to um, hit your entry, come close to profit target, then swing all the way back up, almost take your stop out, and then go back to profit. It's a very sporadic market, and there are times to trade it, but for the majority of the team, Nasdaq is more so used. At least myself personally, I will use Nasdaq as a correlation for my S&P 500 trades. So for example, if I'm looking to get long on S&P 500, I'd want to see that Nasdaq's in a good level of support, number one. And I'll also use Nasdaq as my disqualifier for trades, right? So if Nasdaq is making lower lows and lower highs, and then it comes up into a resistance level, let's say an open or VWAP, and then it cracks that level to the upside, that'll usually be enough for me to disqualify my trade on the S&P 500 and get out of that market, right? So because it moves faster, it's a bit more of a leader than it is a lagger. It tends to give you early signals, right? So if you're in a trade on the S&P 500 and Nasdaq breaks previous highs, you'll often have a chance to scratch for, plus minus one or two ticks, and then look to reevaluate the next trade. All right. So that's what I got on today's session. I hope you guys enjoy this one. A bit of a longer one, but like I said, if the value is there, you guys are enjoying it. This is how we're going to be doing it. So until tomorrow, I hope you guys have a great trading session. It looks like it's kind of quieting down here, especially if you're trading the S&P 500. So follow those three rules: patience, diligence, and discipline. On the S&P 500, not really the environment today to be looking to take home run trades. If you're going to be getting in trades, you're going to keep risk tight leash on those trades, and you're going to look to lock in profits. Don't Today's not one of those sessions where you want to be extending your profits and getting too greedy. All right. So hope you guys enjoy that one. We will see you tomorrow for the midday update and at 9 a.m. for George's morning update. Losing my words here. That means it's time to shut this guy down. Take care, everyone. Ciao. Now to find the where's this thing streaming from, Georgie? You gonna do a dance in the background? Victoria? No?